My name is Amelia Miller, and at 34 I thought I had finally figured out life. I was wrong. The business conference in Chicago was supposed to run until Friday, but when our biggest client canceled their presentation, I caught the first flight home to Denver Thursday evening. 3 days away from home, 3 days of missing my husband Marcus and our comfortable suburban life. I couldn't wait to surprise him. The Uber dropped me off at our colonial-style house on Maple Street at 9:47 p.m. Marcus's BMW was in the driveway, along with a silver Audi I didn't recognize. Probably one of his poker buddies, I thought. Marcus loved his Thursday night games. I paid the driver quietly and grabbed my rolling suitcase, trying not to make noise. I wanted to surprise him. The porch light was off, which was strange. Marcus always left it on when I traveled. The living room was dark too, but I could see a soft glow coming from upstairs. If you've ever been betrayed by the person you trusted most, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe if you're ready to see how a cheating husband's plan to steal everything backfired spectacularly. I slipped my key into the lock and stepped inside. The house smelled different. Perfume. Not mine. Something floral and expensive that made my stomach clench with a recognition I didn't want to acknowledge. My heels clicked softly on the hardwood as I made my way to the stairs. That's when I heard it. Laughter. A woman's laughter, followed by Marcus's deep chuckle. The sound I used to love, now piercing through me like glass. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar, warm light spilling into the hallway. I approached like I was walking through a minefield, knowing that whatever I found would explode my world. I pushed the door open just enough to see inside. There was Marcus, my husband of 8 years, tangled in our Egyptian cotton sheets with a blonde woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than me, probably late 20s, with the kind of effortless beauty that comes from having no responsibilities and plenty of time for the gym. They didn't notice me. They were too busy laughing about something, too comfortable in what they clearly thought was their private moment. Our wedding photo sat on the nightstand, face down. He had turned it over. That detail hit me harder than seeing them together. I stood there for exactly 30 seconds. Long enough to memorize her face. Long enough to see Marcus trace her collarbone the way he used to trace mine. Long enough to realize this wasn't a mistake or a moment of weakness. This was comfortable. This was routine. I backed away from the door, walked down the stairs, grabbed my suitcase, and left through the front door I had entered just minutes before. The Uber driver was still at the end of our street, dropping off another passenger. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. "Are you available for another ride?" He looked confused but nodded. "Sure, lady. Where to?" "The Marriott downtown," I said, sliding into the back seat. "And please drive slowly. I need to make some phone calls." I had chosen the Marriott because it was where Marcus and I had our wedding reception 8 years ago. Poetic justice, I thought, as I checked into a suite on the 12th floor. The first call was to my sister Emma, my business partner and the only person who would understand what I was about to do. "Amelia? It's almost 11. Are you okay? I need you to meet me at the Marriott downtown. Presidential suite. Bring your laptop and that bottle of wine you've been saving." "What happened?" "I'll tell you when you get here." "And Emma? Call David Torres. Tell him I need him here tonight, attorney-client privilege in full effect." Emma knew better than to ask questions when I used that tone. She'd seen me build our marketing consulting firm from nothing into a multi-million-dollar company. She knew I didn't panic. I strategized. David Torres arrived first. At 46, he was Denver's most ruthless divorce attorney, and more importantly, he was my friend from business school. We'd kept in touch over the years, and I'd referred several clients to him. He owed me favors. "Amelia," he said, setting his briefcase on the mahogany conference table. "What's the emergency?" I poured myself a glass of water and told him exactly what I'd seen. No tears, no drama. Just facts. David took notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. "How long do you think this has been going on?" I don't know yet. But I will. Emma burst through the door with her laptop bag and a bottle of Bordeaux. Okay, I'm here. What the hell is happening? I repeated the story. Emma's face went through several stages of shock, anger, and finally, cold determination. This was why we were business partners. This was why we succeeded where others failed. We didn't get mad. We got strategic. What do you need? David asked. I pulled out a folder from my briefcase. First, I need you to review these. I had you draw up papers last year when we restructured the company. Marcus signed a post-nuptial agreement, remember? He was so focused on his new promotion at the bank that he barely read it. David flipped through the documents, his eyebrows rising. You moved everything into a trust structure? Everything. The house, my business shares, our investments. All of it goes through the Miller Family Trust, which I control entirely. Marcus has what he thinks is joint access to our checking account and credit cards, but those are actually subsidiary accounts. Emma opened her laptop. You've been planning this? Not planning. Preparing. There's a difference. I learned early in business that you protect your assets first, trust second. I sat down across from them. I never thought I'd need it for this, but here we are. David was still reading. Jesus, Amelia. He basically signed away all claim to marital assets if infidelity could be proven. He has no idea, does he? None. He thinks he's entitled to half of everything I've built. He thinks he's safe because I travel for work and he has plenty of time for his little adventures. I opened Emma's wine and poured 3 glasses. He's about to learn otherwise. What's the plan? Emma asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the security app for our house. First, I'm going to watch them. Our security system records everything, and I can access it remotely. I need evidence, timestamps, patterns. Then I'm going to dismantle his life the same way he dismantled our marriage. Piece by piece, strategically, completely. David looked concerned. Amelia, I have to advise you to be careful. Revenge can backfire legally. This isn't revenge, I said, taking a sip of wine. This is consequences. There's a difference. I spent the night in the hotel, watching the security feeds from our house on my laptop. Emma fell asleep on the couch around 2 a.m., but I stayed awake, documenting everything. Timestamps, screenshots, video clips of them together in my home, in my bed, eating food I'd paid for. The woman left at 6:23 a.m., but not before Marcus walked her to the door and kissed her goodbye like they were a couple. Like they belonged together. Like I was the other woman. I ran her license plate through a private investigator service I used for business background checks. Victoria Chen, Arshaba, marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Financial. Marcus's bank. By morning, I had 17 video clips, 43 screenshots, and a complete profile on Victoria. She lived in a downtown loft, drove a leased Audi, and according to her social media, had been posting cryptic quotes about finding true love when you least expect it for the past 6 months. David arrived with coffee and pastries at 7 a.m. Did you sleep? Sleep is for people who aren't documenting their husband's infidelity, I replied, showing him the evidence I'd compiled. Look at this. I pulled up Victoria's Instagram. There, going back months, were subtle hints. Photos of expensive dinners she couldn't afford on her salary. A bracelet I'd never seen her wear, photographed with the caption, "When someone special shows they care." A mirror selfie in what looked like a hotel room, posted at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday when Marcus had told me he was in meetings all day. She's been documenting their affair without realizing it, Emma said, now awake and looking over my shoulder. This is perfect. David reviewed the video evidence. This is more than enough for the divorce. But what else do you want to do? I closed the laptop. I want her fired. I want Marcus's reputation destroyed. I want everyone who knows us to understand exactly who he really is. And how do you plan to do that? Marcus thinks he's clever, but he made one crucial mistake. He didn't just cheat on me. He cheated with a subordinate at his own bank. That's a violation of company policy, potentially sexual harassment if she reports to him or his department, and definitely grounds for termination. I pulled out another folder. I've been tracking our joint account. Marcus has been spending money on her for months. Restaurants I've never been to, jewelry I've never received, hotel rooms on days when he told me he was working late. He's used marital assets to fund his affair. Emma whistled low. That's not just cheating. That's theft. Exactly. And Victoria? She's about to learn that dating married men has consequences too. David looked impressed despite himself. What do you need from me legally? File the divorce papers today. I want him served at work in front of his colleagues. Include everything: the adultery, the financial misuse, the violation of our postnuptial agreement. Make it clear that he gets nothing. And if he contests it? I smiled for the first time since coming home. Let him try. I've got 8 months of evidence, including bank records showing he spent our money on his mistress. No judge will side with him. What about Victoria? Leave her to me. Marcus's morning routine never varied. Coffee at 7:15, shower at 7:30, out the door by 8:15. I knew this because I'd lived with him for 8 years. What I hadn't known was that after I left for business trips, that routine changed completely. At 8:45 a.m., I watched him through our security cameras as he made a phone call from our kitchen. From the way he was laughing and the gestures he made, it was clearly Victoria. He was telling her something amusing, probably about how clueless I was, how easy it was to deceive me. That was his second mistake. I called the main number for Pinnacle Financial and asked to speak with the HR director. This is Sarah Martinez. How can I help you? Ms. Martinez, this is Amelia Miller. I'm calling to report a serious ethical violation involving 2 of your employees. I'm listening. My husband, Marcus Miller, is having an affair with Victoria Chen. I have documented evidence of them using company resources for their personal relationship, including what appears to be meetings during work hours and the use of company facilities for personal matters. There was a pause. Mrs. Miller, these are serious allegations. Do you have proof? I have video evidence, financial records showing he spent company expense account money on personal dinners with her, and documentation of their relationship spanning several months. I can provide everything you need for a full investigation. I see. Can you come in today at 2 p.m.? I'll need to see this evidence before we proceed. I'll be there. The next call was to Marcus's boss, Richard Hawthorne. Marcus had introduced us at the company Christmas party 3 years ago. Richard was old school, conservative, and had very strong opinions about family values and professional conduct. Richard? This is Amelia Miller, Marcus's wife. Amelia, how are you? I heard you were traveling for business this week. I was, but I came home early. Richard, I need to tell you something, and it's going to be difficult to hear. I gave him the same information I'd given HR, but with additional context about how this affair might be affecting Marcus's judgment and performance at work. Jesus Christ, Amelia. Are you sure? Completely sure. I have everything documented. HR is investigating, but I wanted you to know directly since you've always been good to our family. I appreciate that. This is very disappointing. Richard, there's something else. I've discovered that Marcus has been using our joint credit card to pay for dinners and hotels for this affair. Some of those charges might have been coded as business expenses for tax purposes. You might want to review his expense reports. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. Richard was already thinking about the liability this created for the bank. Amelia, I'm sorry this happened to you. And I'm sorry that it's going to create problems here as well. I understand you have to do what's best for the bank. I just thought you should know before it becomes public knowledge. By noon, I had an appointment with HR at Pinnacle Financial, a meeting scheduled with David to review the divorce papers, and a plan for Phase 2 of Marcus's education in consequences. Emma was coordinating with our assistant back home to clear my schedule for the next 2 weeks. The Palmer account can wait, she said. The Morrison project is Emma's problem now. You focus on this. I love you, Emma. I love you too. And I'm going to love watching you destroy him. The morning of the HR meeting, I woke up at 5 a.m. in my hotel suite, not because of an alarm, but because my mind was racing with anticipation. Emma was still asleep on the pull-out couch, surrounded by empty coffee cups and printed documents from our late-night strategy session. I ordered room service coffee, fruit, and pastries I had no intention of eating, and spread out all my evidence one final time. Video files organized by date and time. Financial records color-coded by type of expense. Screenshots of Victoria's social media posts with timestamps proving the timeline of their relationship. Phone records showing calls made during work hours. Credit card statements highlighting suspicious charges at restaurants and hotels. It was a prosecutor's dream and a cheating husband's nightmare. At 7 a.m., I called my business manager, Patricia, back in our main office. Amelia? I wasn't expecting to hear from you this week. How's the family emergency? I had told my staff I had a family crisis to handle, which wasn't technically a lie. It's complicated, Patricia. I need you to do something for me, and I need absolute discretion. Of course. What do you need? I need you to research every business account Marcus has ever had access to. Every client dinner he's charged to the company, every business trip expense, every meeting that involved our corporate credit card. I want a complete audit going back 2 years. There was a pause. Amelia, that's going to take days. Can I ask why? Marcus has been using our business accounts to hide personal expenses. I need to know the full scope before I take action. Patricia had been with me since I started the company. She knew how to read between the lines. Are we talking about embezzlement? We're talking about a man who thought he could steal from his wife's company the same way he stole from his employer. I need every detail, Patricia. Every receipt, every justification, every signature. I'll have it by end of business today. Thank you. And Patricia? Not a word to anyone else. This stays between us until I tell you otherwise. After hanging up, I showered and dressed carefully. Navy blue suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a professional bun. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a successful businesswoman who was not to be underestimated. Emma woke up as I was applying lipstick. You look like you're going to war. I am going to war. But I'm going to win it professionally. What's the plan after the bank meeting? I checked my watch. I have lunch with Rebecca Martinez. Emma's eyebrows shot up. Rebecca Martinez from Channel Chi News? Amelia, please tell me you're not going to the media. I'm not going to the media. Rebecca is going to come to me. There's a difference. Rebecca Martinez and I had been sorority sisters at CU Boulder 15 years ago. She'd built a career as an investigative journalist, specializing in white-collar crime and financial fraud. 2 months ago, she'd done a series on banking industry corruption that had won her a regional Emmy. Rebecca is going to be very interested in a story about a bank employee using his position to defraud clients and his own wife, especially when that employee's actions led to the discovery of a larger pattern of fraud within the institution. Emma stared at me. You're going to destroy him publicly too. I'm going to make sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. And I'm going to make sure that Marcus's name is permanently associated with the consequences of his actions. The truth was, I felt a cold, calculated anger that surprised me. For 8 years, I had been the understanding wife, the supportive partner, the woman who made excuses for his mood swings and absences. I had enabled his behavior by being too trusting, too accommodating, too willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. That woman was gone. In her place was someone who understood that sometimes, mercy is just another word for enabling. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for the world is to make sure a predator faces the full consequences of their actions. Pinnacle Financial's headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in downtown Denver. I'd been there many times for bank events and holiday parties, always as Marcus's supportive wife. Today, I was there as the woman who was about to end his career. Sarah Martinez was exactly what I expected from an HR director: professional, thorough, and very concerned about liability. She reviewed my evidence for over an hour, taking notes and making copies of everything. "Mrs. Miller, this is extremely comprehensive. How long have you been gathering this information?" "I've been tracking our finances for months because I noticed unusual spending. I only discovered the affair last night, but once I knew what to look for, the pattern became obvious." She pulled out Marcus's employee file. "Mr. Miller is a senior loan officer. Ms. Chen works in the marketing department, but they collaborate on client presentations regularly. This creates a clear conflict of interest and potential liability for the bank." "What happens now?" "We'll be conducting a full investigation. Both employees will be questioned, and we'll be reviewing all their communications on company systems. If what you're showing me is accurate, this is grounds for immediate termination for both of them." "What about the financial aspects? The expense account irregularities?" Sarah's expression hardened. "That would be considered fraud. We'll be reviewing every expense report Mr. Miller has submitted in the past year." I felt a surge of satisfaction. How long does this process usually take? "For something this serious? We'll have preliminary findings within 48 hours. If fraud is confirmed, we may need to involve law enforcement." "Perfect." I thanked Sarah and left, feeling lighter than I had in months. Marcus thought he was so smart, so careful. He had no idea that his wife was the kind of woman who built a successful business by paying attention to details and planning for contingencies. My phone buzzed with a text from David: "Papers filed. Server will deliver them to his office at 4 p.m. today. Are you ready for this?" I texted back, "More than ready." I positioned myself across the street from Pinnacle Financial at 3:45 p.m., sitting in a coffee shop with a clear view of the building's entrance. David was with me, ostensibly reviewing documents but really providing moral support. At exactly 4 p.m., a man in a suit entered the building carrying an official envelope. "The process server." My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. "Marcus." "What the hell is this, Amelia? Did you serve me with divorce papers at my office?" I answered calmly. "Hello, Marcus. I hope you're having a good day. Don't play games with me. People are staring. My boss wants to see me. What is this about?" "I think you know exactly what this is about. Did you enjoy last night?" Silence. "Then we need to talk. I tried talking to you for 8 years. You were apparently too busy to listen. Now my lawyer will do the talking." "Amelia, please. Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you turned over our wedding photo before you fucked another woman in our bed. Or how you've been spending my money on your girlfriend for months. Which part would you like to explain?" "You can't do this. You can't just—" "I can do exactly this. Read the papers, Marcus. Remember that post-nuptial agreement you signed last year? The one you didn't bother reading because you were so excited about your promotion? You might want to review it." "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you have no claim to any of our assets. I'm talking about the fact that you've been committing adultery for months while spending marital funds on your mistress. I'm talking about the fact that your career is about to be over." Another silence. "You're bluffing." "Ask Victoria how I'm bluffing." "Oh wait, you can't. HR is interviewing her right now about your relationship and the company policy violations. Funny how quickly things can change, isn't it?" I hung up. David looked impressed. That was cold. That was justice. My phone immediately started ringing again. I declined the call and watched through the coffee shop window as Marcus emerged from the building, looking disheveled and panicked. He got in his BMW and sped away, probably heading home to an empty house he no longer had access to. "Phase 1 complete," I said to David. "What's next?" "Now we wait for his response. But honestly, Amelia, with this evidence and the postnuptial agreement, he doesn't have many options. He can contest it, but he'll lose and rack up legal bills he can't afford." "What about the criminal aspects? The expense account fraud?" That's up to the bank and the DA. But if they find what I think they're going to find, Marcus might have bigger problems than divorce court. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not happiness, I wasn't ready for that yet. But satisfaction that after 8 years of being taken for granted, 8 years of being deceived, I was finally taking control of my life. You know what the best part is? I told David. What's that? He still thinks this is about the affair. He has no idea that I've been protecting myself from this exact scenario for over a year. He signed away his rights to everything because he was so focused on his career advancement that he didn't pay attention to what really mattered. You've been planning this for a year? No, I've been preparing for any scenario where our marriage might end. Business taught me that you always have an exit strategy. Always. I never thought I'd need it for infidelity, but the principle is the same. David shook his head. Remind me never to cheat on my wife. Good policy. By Friday morning, Marcus's world was collapsing faster than I had even anticipated. Sarah Martinez called me at 9 a.m. with an update that exceeded my best expectations. MRS Miller? We've completed our preliminary investigation. I wanted to update you on our findings. I'm listening. We've terminated both Mr. Miller and Ms. Chen, effective immediately. We found evidence of numerous policy violations, including the use of company resources for personal matters, falsified expense reports, and what appears to be intentional fraud regarding business meal charges. I felt a surge of vindication. What happens next? We're referring the financial irregularities to law enforcement. The total amount of fraudulent expenses appears to exceed $15,000, which makes this a felony in Colorado. We're also reviewing their communications on company systems, which revealed extensive personal use of corporate resources. $15,000. Marcus had spent $15,000 of our money on his affair, then tried to hide it by coding some of it as business expenses. The man who used to lecture me about being careful with our budget. Will you need me for anything else? You may be called as a witness if criminal charges are filed. But Mrs. Miller? I want you to know that your coming forward likely prevented this from becoming much worse. We found evidence that suggests this behavior was escalating. After I hung up, I called Emma with the update. Holy shit, Amelia. Felony fraud? He's looking at jail time. I know. I almost feel sorry for him. Almost. What about Victoria? Fired, but she's not facing criminal charges. She'll have a hard time finding another job in banking with this on her record, but she's young. She'll recover. And you? How are you handling all this? I considered the question. I'm angry. I'm hurt. But I'm also relieved. I spent months thinking something was wrong with our marriage, wondering if I was working too much, if I wasn't paying enough attention to him. Turns out the problem was that I was married to a liar and a thief. Are you going to be okay financially? Better than okay. The house is mine, the business is mine, our investments are mine. Marcus gets his clothes, his personal items, and whatever is in his individual checking account, which, last I checked, was about $2,400. Jesus. He really signed away everything. Everything. He was so focused on advancing his career that he treated our postnuptial agreement like paperwork. He literally signed away his rights to our entire life together because he couldn't be bothered to read 12 pages of legal documents. That afternoon, I drove to our house, my house now, to pack up Marcus's belongings. I'd had the locks changed that morning, and I wanted his things gone before he figured out where I was staying. The house felt different without him in it. Not empty, cleaner. Like a weight had been lifted from every room. I went through his closet methodically, packing his suits, his shoes, his cologne. All the things he'd used to make himself attractive to another woman. In his nightstand drawer, I found something that stopped me cold. A receipt from a jewelry store dated 2 weeks ago. A $3,000 necklace. For Victoria, obviously. Our 8th wedding anniversary was next month. He'd spent more on a necklace for his mistress than he'd spent on my anniversary gifts in the past 3 years combined. I took a photo of the receipt and added it to the evidence file. By evening, I had everything packed in boxes and bags, stacked neatly in the garage. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Your belongings are in the garage. You have 48 hours to collect them. The locks have been changed. Do not attempt to enter the house. All future communication goes through lawyers. Then I poured myself a glass of wine, ordered Chinese food, and sat in my living room, finally allowing myself to feel the full impact of what had happened. My marriage was over. My husband of 8 years had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. But I was going to be fine. Better than fine. I was free. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, reviewing the final divorce settlement. Marcus had tried to contest it, of course. He'd hired his own lawyer and attempted to argue that the postnuptial agreement was invalid, that I had coerced him into signing it, that he deserved half of everything we'd built together. His lawyer had lasted exactly 1 meeting before dropping him as a client. Apparently, when faced with video evidence of adultery, documented financial fraud, and an ironclad postnuptial agreement, even desperate attorneys have standards. He's agreed to everything, David told me, sliding the settlement papers across his desk. No contest, no appeals, no attempts to claim any assets. He just wants this to be over. What about the criminal charges? That's separate. The DA's office is still building their case, but it looks like he'll plead guilty to avoid jail time. He'll probably get probation and restitution. I signed the papers with a sense of finality that was both sad and liberating. 8 years of my life officially over. There's one more thing, David said. Victoria Chen's lawyer contacted me yesterday. She wants to meet with you. Victoria wants to meet with me? Why? She didn't say. But her lawyer indicated it might be worth your while. Curious, I agreed to the meeting. 2 days later, Victoria Chen walked into the conference room at David's office, looking nothing like the confident woman I'd seen in my security footage. She was thin, pale, and clearly devastated. Mrs. Miller, she said quietly, thank you for agreeing to see me. Call me Amelia. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure why we're here. Victoria's lawyer, a young woman who looked fresh out of law school, placed a folder on the table. My client wants to provide you with information that might be relevant to your situation. Victoria looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I need you to know that I didn't know Marcus was married when we first started seeing each other. I felt David tense beside me, but I kept my expression neutral. Go on. We met at a work conference in March. He said he was divorced, that he lived alone, that his ex-wife had moved back to California. I believed him. She wiped her eyes with a tissue. It wasn't until June that I started to suspect he was lying. What happened in June? I found your Christmas card in his car. The one with both of your names on it, dated last December. When I confronted him, he said it was old, that you were officially divorced but hadn't told family and friends yet. I felt a cold anger building in my chest. And you believed that? I wanted to. I was falling in love with him. But I started paying attention to things. He never took me to his house. He always wanted to meet at hotels or my apartment. He wouldn't let me call him in the evenings or on weekends. Victoria's lawyer opened the folder. My client began documenting her concerns about Mr. Miller's honesty. She has text messages, emails, and recorded phone calls that show he was actively deceiving both of you. Recorded phone calls? Victoria nodded miserably. I recorded our conversations for the last 2 months because I was starting to think he was married and I wanted proof. I needed to know the truth. She handed me a small digital recorder. There are 12 conversations on there. In one of them, he admits that he's still married, but says he's planning to leave you after he gets promoted to vice president. He talks about how he's been slowly moving assets out of your joint accounts. My blood ran cold. Moving assets? He was planning to clean out your accounts and disappear. He said you traveled so much for work that it would be weeks before you noticed. He was going to take everything and leave you with nothing. David was already reaching for his phone. We need to check your accounts immediately. There's more, Victoria continued. He was using me to get information about bank security protocols. He was planning to access accounts that weren't technically his, but he knew the systems well enough to make it work. I stared at her, processing this information. You're telling me he wasn't just cheating. He was planning to rob me. Yes. And he was going to frame it to look like you had authorized the transfers. He had been studying your travel schedule, your business patterns, everything. The full scope of Marcus's betrayal was becoming clear. This wasn't just an affair. This was a calculated plan to destroy my life and steal everything I'd worked for. Why are you telling me this? I asked Victoria. Because when I found out the truth, that you were really his wife, that you were a good person who didn't deserve this, I realized I'd been just as much his victim as you were. He used me, lied to me, and was planning to disappear from both of our lives once he got what he wanted. Victoria's lawyer spoke up. My client is prepared to testify against Mr. Miller in any criminal proceedings. She's also prepared to provide all the evidence she's gathered about his plans to defraud you. I looked at Victoria, this young woman who had unknowingly been part of the destruction of my marriage but was now trying to make it right. Thank you, I said finally. This changes everything. Armed with Victoria's evidence, the case against Marcus went from simple expense account fraud to attempted grand theft and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The DA was very interested in the recorded conversations where Marcus detailed his plans to steal from me and disappear. This isn't just adultery anymore, David explained to me over coffee. This is a man who is systematically planning to destroy your life and steal your assets. Victoria's testimony makes this a much more serious crime. What's he looking at now? 5 to 10 years if convicted on all charges. The financial fraud, the conspiracy, the abuse of his position at the bank, it all adds up. He won't take a plea deal because he thinks he can beat it, but the evidence is overwhelming. I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. The man I'd married, the man I'd loved for 8 years, was a stranger. Worse than a stranger, he was someone who had been planning to destroy me. There's something else, David continued. The bank's investigation found evidence that Marcus had been doing this before with previous clients. They're reviewing his entire career now. Other people? Looks like it. You may not be his only victim, just his most personal one. Armed with Victoria's evidence, the case against Marcus went from simple expense account fraud to attempted grand theft and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The DA was very interested in the recorded conversations where Marcus detailed his plans to steal from me and disappear. This isn't just adultery anymore, David explained to me over coffee. This is a man who is systematically planning to destroy your life and steal your assets. Victoria's testimony makes this a much more serious crime. What's he looking at now? 5 to 10 years if convicted on all charges. The financial fraud, the conspiracy, the abuse of his position at the bank, it all adds up. He won't take a plea deal because he thinks he can beat it, but the evidence is overwhelming. I felt a mixture of vindication and sadness. The man I'd married, the man I'd loved for 8 years, was a stranger. Worse than a stranger, he was someone who had been planning to destroy me. There's something else, David continued. The bank's investigation found evidence that Marcus had been doing this before with previous clients. They're reviewing his entire career now. Other people? Looks like it. You may not be his only victim, just his most personal one. The weeks leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of depositions, meetings with prosecutors, and media attention that I hadn't anticipated. Rebecca Martinez's investigation had opened a floodgate of scrutiny into Pinnacle Financial's practices, and Marcus had become the face of banking industry corruption in Denver. I found myself testifying not just in Marcus's criminal trial, but also in civil proceedings brought by other victims who had come forward after the story broke. Elderly clients who had been talked into unnecessary loans. Small business owners who had been charged excessive fees. Young couples who had been steered toward predatory lending products. The pattern was clear. Marcus had been using his position to exploit vulnerable clients for years, skimming fees and commissions, manipulating loan terms, and covering his tracks through falsified documentation. What he had planned to do to me was just a larger version of what he had been doing to strangers for most of his career. "You did this," Emma told me one evening as we sat in my hotel suite, reviewing testimony transcripts. "You brought down an entire network of fraud." "I just protected myself," I replied. "Everything else was just collateral justice." But that wasn't entirely true, and we both knew it. I had made a deliberate choice to pursue Marcus as aggressively as possible, not just for what he had done to me, but for what he represented. He was every woman's worst nightmare, the charming husband who presented one face to the world while systematically destroying the person who trusted him most. The trial itself was almost anticlimactic. The evidence was so overwhelming, the pattern of behavior so clear, that Marcus's defense attorney spent most of his time trying to negotiate a plea deal that would keep his client out of federal prison. Marcus himself seemed to shrink more each day of the proceedings. The confident, charismatic man I had married was gone, replaced by someone who looked defeated and small. When he took the stand in his own defense, his testimony was rambling and contradictory, full of excuses and justifications that fooled no one. "I loved my wife," he said at one point, looking directly at me for the first time since the trial began. "I never meant for any of this to happen." I stared back at him, feeling nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering affection. Just emptiness where love used to be. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. They painted a picture of a man who had built his entire adult life on deception, who had used his charm and position to exploit everyone around him, who had finally been stopped only because one of his victims had been smart enough and strong enough to fight back. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned with guilty verdicts on all charges, I felt a deep sense of completion. Not satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about protecting future victims, about making sure that actions had consequences. The judge sentenced him to 7 years in prison and ordered full restitution, not just to me but to the other clients he had defrauded over the years. The man who had called me naive and trusting was going to spend the prime years of his life in a prison cell. As the bailiff led Marcus away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. I thought I saw regret in his eyes, maybe even the beginning of understanding about what he had lost. But it was too late for regret. Far too late. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with questions about how I felt, whether I thought justice had been served, what advice I would give to other women in similar situations. "I would tell them to trust their instincts," I said into the cluster of microphones. "If something feels wrong, it probably is. And I would tell them that they are stronger than they know, that they deserve better than lies and betrayal, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to refuse to be anyone's victim." That soundbite played on the evening news for 3 days straight. I received hundreds of emails from women sharing their own stories of betrayal and recovery. Some were in the early stages of discovering infidelity. Others were years into rebuilding their lives. All of them seemed to find something inspiring in my refusal to be quietly destroyed. I felt no joy in his conviction, but I felt justice. More than that, I felt free. 6 months after the trial, I was sitting in the office of my expanded marketing firm, reviewing proposals for our newest client. Emma and I had grown the business by 30% since my divorce, partly because I'd thrown myself into work, but mostly because being free from Marcus's negativity and manipulation had unleashed a creativity and confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. "You look happy," Emma observed, settling into the chair across from my desk with her morning coffee. "I am happy," I realized, somewhat surprised by the admission. For the first time in years, I'm actually happy. "Any regrets?" I considered the question. I regret that I wasted 8 years of my life with someone who didn't deserve me. I regret that I didn't trust my instincts earlier when things felt wrong. But I don't regret how I handled it once I knew the truth. Even though some people think you went too far? There had been criticism, of course. Some mutual friends thought I should have handled the situation more quietly, more privately. They thought serving him at work was cruel, that involving his employer was vindictive, that ruining his career was excessive. Those people don't understand what he was planning to do to me, I said. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to steal everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. If I'd handled it quietly, if I'd trusted him to do the right thing, I'd be bankrupt and he'd be living in another state with my money. Emma nodded. Plus, the other victims. If you hadn't come forward, he would have kept stealing from people. That was the part that gave me the most satisfaction. The investigation into Marcus had uncovered a pattern of financial abuse that went back years. By exposing him, I'd prevented future victims and helped several past victims recover some of their losses. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria Chen. We'd stayed in touch sporadically since the trial. She'd left Denver and moved to Seattle, starting fresh with a new job and a new life. How are you doing? She'd written. Saw the article about your company's expansion. So proud of you. I texted back, doing well. How's Seattle? Good. I'm engaged. To a really good guy this time. Someone who's actually divorced and honest about it. I smiled, genuinely happy for her. Victoria had been a victim too, manipulated and used by someone she'd trusted. She deserved happiness. Any news on your end? She texted. I thought about that. Was there news? I'd been on a few dates, nothing serious. I'd bought a new house, smaller but perfect for me. I'd traveled to places Marcus had never wanted to go. I'd reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage. Just living my best life, I replied. And I was. For the first time in years, I was making decisions based on what I wanted, not what someone else expected of me. I was successful, independent, and free. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I'm writing this from my home office in my new house overlooking Cherry Creek. It's smaller than the suburban house I shared with Marcus, but it's entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every painting on the wall, every book on the shelves reflects who I am, not who I was trying to be for someone else. The marketing firm Emma and I built is now one of the most successful in Denver. We have 18 employees and clients across the country. I travel frequently, but now it's because I love what I do, not because I'm running away from problems at home. Marcus was released from prison 6 months ago. I heard through mutual friends that he's working at a small accounting firm in a different state, trying to rebuild his life. He owes me. He owes me $127,000 in restitution, which he pays monthly like clockwork. Every check that arrives feels like a small victory, a reminder that actions have consequences. I never remarried, though I've been in a wonderful relationship with James, a fellow entrepreneur, for the past year. He's everything Marcus wasn't: honest, supportive, genuinely interested in my success rather than threatened by it. We take things slowly, both of us having learned the value of really knowing someone before making commitments. Victoria and I exchange Christmas cards now, a friendship born from shared trauma but sustained by mutual respect. She married her Seattle boyfriend last spring and sent me a photo from her wedding. She looked radiant, truly happy in a way I never saw her during those dark months when she was unknowingly part of Marcus's deception. People often ask me if I think my response to Marcus's betrayal was too extreme. They want to know if I feel guilty about destroying his career, about sending him to prison, about being so thorough in my pursuit of justice. My answer is always the same: I didn't destroy Marcus's life. He did that himself. I simply refuse to be destroyed along with it. I learned something important through this experience. For too many years, I had been accommodating, understanding, willing to overlook red flags because I wanted to believe in the man I'd married. I had been the kind of woman who prioritized keeping the peace over protecting herself. That woman is gone. In her place is someone stronger, someone who trusts her instincts, someone who knows the difference between love and manipulation. I'm not bitter. Bitterness would mean letting Marcus continue to control my emotional life even after our marriage ended. Instead, I'm grateful. Grateful for the lesson, grateful for the strength I discovered in myself, grateful for the life I've built from the ashes of my former naivety. The house on Maple Street sold last year for well above asking price. I used the money to buy a small vacation cabin in Aspen, a place where I can write, think, and remember who I am when I'm not being anyone's wife, anyone's business partner, anyone's expectation. Sometimes I sit on the deck of that cabin with a glass of wine, watching the sun set over the mountains, and I think about that night 3 years ago when I came home early from Chicago. I think about the woman who walked up those stairs, opened that bedroom door, and saw her world collapse. That woman thought her life was ending. She had no idea it was just beginning. I think about Marcus sometimes too, wonder if he ever truly understood what he lost. Not the money or the house or the comfortable life, those were just things. He lost the chance to grow old with someone who had loved him completely, who had been building a life with him, who had been planning a future that included him in every dream. He threw that away for momentary pleasure and easy money. He traded a lifetime of genuine partnership for a few months of deception and excitement. In the end, that says everything about who he really was. As for me, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Successful, independent, surrounded by people who value honesty and integrity. I'm the author of my own story now, and it's a much better story than the one I was living before. Was my response to betrayal justified? I think about this question often, especially when people suggest I went too far, that I was vindictive, that I should have been more forgiving. But here's what those people don't understand. Marcus didn't just cheat on me. He was planning to destroy me financially and emotionally, to steal everything I'd worked for and leave me with nothing. He was using our marriage as cover for criminal activity that extended far beyond our relationship. I didn't seek revenge. I sought justice. I protected myself and, as it turned out, protected others who might have been his future victims. I used the law, used the systems that exist precisely for situations like this, and I used them effectively. Would I do it again? Without hesitation. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to refuse to be anyone's victim. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is to show the world exactly what happens when you betray someone who knows their own worth. I am Amelia Miller. I am 37 years old. I am successful, strong, and free. And I am nobody's fool anymore. 3 years ago, Marcus thought he could take everything from me. Instead, he gave me the greatest gift of all. He showed me who I really am when I stopped trying to be who everyone else wants me to be. For that, despite everything, I'm grateful. The end.